I love Star Wars. I can't say that enough. I love Star Wars. If you came here for some kind of unbiased take on the original trilogy, I'm sorry I have wasted your time, so here's a clip to make it up to you.
His son, Lumpy.
Yes, this is the beginning of my series where I will review every Star Wars movie ever made. Star Wars is, without a doubt, one of the biggest sagas ever created, and I've been alive long enough to call it the best trilogy, the best series, and now the best saga. It's checked every box. It is a marketer's dream. There's toys, shirts, posters, books. Star Wars has it all. The best part about Star Wars is that it feels different for everyone. For me, the original trilogy is what Star Wars should feel like. But I know people who grew up in the 90s and therefore had a fresh take on the prequels who believe that the first 6 movies are what Star Wars should feel like. I'm sure there are people alive right now who feel something different about all 9 movies in the same universe. Star Wars started as a sci-fi western serial knockoff of Flash Gordon, but the world building allowed itself for different genres, westerns, adventures, children's learning shows, bank heists, etc., etc. I know people who aren't really into Star Wars that absolutely love The Mandalorian, which feels like the original trilogy, but has characters and references to the prequel trilogy. Like I said, I grew up with the original trilogy. My experiences with advancement in the universe were Shadows of the Empire, the book, the game, the comic, which all felt very original trilogy to me. So while these series of videos I do will include every Star Wars movie ever made, this will be the most positive one. Are you prepared for that? Because there's going to be a lot of Star Wars glazing going forward. The first movie is an instant classic, a Hall of Fame movie, a masterpiece. It's so simple, but if you watch it from the point of view from someone from the 70s, it's groundbreaking. Unfortunately, I can't watch it from that perspective because I was born in the 80s and I'm a shitty actor.
I don't like sand.
This movie came out in 1977, and unknown to a lot of people, it was just called Star Wars. The idea of calling it A New Hope didn't come out for another 4 years after George Lucas, the director obviously, wanted the movie to feel like it was a part of a much grander storyline arc, similar to how the serials from his childhood would do. And I'm going to cut to the chase and spoil this portion of the video for you right off the bat. I think A New Hope is a perfect movie. Even the things wrong with it just seem right. A lot of the things that people criticize the other 6 Skywalker saga movies for, like lack of planning,
so what I told you was true, from a certain point of view,
just feel right here. I like it so much that A New Hope was the first movie-based book I ever read. Up until that point, if a story was told via movie and a book, I only watched the movie. I didn't see a point in reading the book, but A New Hope changed that for me. It's that powerful. The good guys were cliched. One of them was a princess, for God's sakes, and the bad guys were all generic, and everything had to be fleshed out in other movies. But if you went into this movie thinking that there was only going to be one, not part of a saga, this movie would have been perfect, flaws and all. It was one of the first movies to do a sci-fi storytelling at a blockbuster level, even being what some consider the birth of the modern day blockbuster in general. Heroes, villains, big explosions. Despite some of the backstory being fleshed out in later movies, A New Hope wasn't really trying to tell a huge story. In the context of one movie, Luke Skywalker's dad really was a rebel pilot who was just being betrayed and murdered by a big bad generic baddie Darth Vader. It wasn't any more complicated than that. The hero of the story, Luke Skywalker, really was in love with the damsel in distress, Princess Leia. The idea that these two were actually brother and sister hadn't even been thought of yet. Not by us, not by the creator George Lucas. It was a simple story about a young farm boy living up to his father's potential and getting revenge by doing what he dreamed of doing. Something bigger and more important with his life, specifically flying. To start the film, we have what will later be an iconic part of the Star Wars saga and jarringly missing from the spin-offs, the text crawl. I don't have much to say about this one. It moves at a steady pace, the font is the perfect size, the movie gets you invested, And the story it tells is simple and concise. Again, this was supposed to be a one and done story with the premise that it is in the middle of a story already in progress. They quickly tell you the story and off we go. Not much to it here, which is perfect. The beginning of the movie is actually very creative. We get thrown dead center in the middle of a battle already in progress, and the remainder of the intro is told from the point of view of two droids who aren't even the main characters. In fact, one of them doesn't even speak a known language, he just beeps and boops. It's so well done that you have a general idea what this droid is trying to convey.
Don't you call me a mindless philosopher, you overweight glob of grease?
The other droid is used more as an exposition device, and it makes sense because its programming has him speaking very matter-of-factly. Again, it's perfect. At no point does this movie lose our interest, despite the first 10 minutes having no main character we can relate to. Luke Skywalker, the actual protagonist of this movie, is introduced directly when he becomes relevant to the plot. We don't see him prior to meeting the droids. Now, most movies would have done some weird transition from the droids to Luke prior to them meeting for the first time, but no, this movie introduces us to Luke like he's a literal no one. There's zero indication this is our main hero. Once it's made clear that this movie is the Luke Skywalker movie, characters start coming out of the woodwork and giving us dialogue and exposition and development.
Hello there.
Like, quickly we learn that Luke worked with his aunt and uncle on a farm doing God knows what, and that he has dreams of being something more important to the bigger picture. He's not content living in one place. He wants to see the world, or galaxy. There's even a small clip that becomes super important as to why I actually tolerate the prequels later, where Luke and his aunt and uncle are drinking blue milk at a dinner together, and Luke says he's ready to move on and to fight in the war. And his uncle says, nah, son, making him the first real roadblock in the movie. I'll get to why this scene is so important to why I like the prequels when I talk about the prequels, but just keep that in the back of your head. He quickly meets Obi-Wan due to droid hijinks, and we're told about the Force. What is the Force? Well, in the very next scene, the movie shows us when we're fully introduced to Darth Vader. Yeah, Darth Vader makes an appearance at the beginning of the movie when we're told nothing about what's going on, so it's a real what situation right until now. It's in this scene that we learn how menacing Vader really is, as he uses the Force to choke someone who questions him. We also learn that Vader's kind of a lapdog in this movie to someone else, and that's never really explored and is later retconned in other movies where Vader is second only to the Emperor, who isn't even mentioned or conceived of at this point. Vader in this movie is just meant to be a menacing henchman. We have a few scenes of Luke and Obi-Wan making a plan to get out of Dodge, and that's when Luke's aunt and uncle are burned alive, and we also simultaneously get scenes that the evil Empire has Princess Leia and they torture her for information. These series of events perfectly establish everything that we need to know. There's the Force, the Empire's bad, Luke is a kind-hearted hero of our story, and Princess Leia is a damsel in distress that represents the good side. This is all explained to us in a matter of minutes in the best flow of storytelling I've seen in any movie. Maybe not ever, but it's definitely up there. It's building up the tension that things are only getting worse outside of the story with Luke. With the rebels having lost the battle we saw at the opening of the movie, Vader having magic that can choke someone from across the room, and Princess Leia is not only held captive, but tortured. It's at this point that we're introduced to mine and probably everybody else's favorite character, Han Solo. There's absolutely no indication that this movie is in any condition to just start adding important characters to the story, but it does, and it does so organically. Again, we're not introduced to Han Solo several minutes before he becomes important to the plot. We're introduced to him the second he meets up with our main cast. He's their pilot, and all we know is he's a sarcastic prick who smuggles things for a living. Han Solo is so well played and so well written in this movie that he is just as iconic as everyone else, despite not coming into play until nearly halfway through the movie. I can think of a lot of other movies that introduce characters halfway through the movie, and I guarantee you they didn't go on to become as iconic. Like, I dare you to name one character that isn't Andor from Rogue One. In this scene, Solo is smug, becomes a wanted man, becomes a murderer, and the secondary main character all within minutes. Again, this script is so streamlined that it's damn near perfect. Don't get me started on all the rewrites. Han shot first because he's that type of guy. At this point of this movie, We had no indication he was going to be a heart of gold hero like Luke to a trilogy. He was a dangerous man for hire in one single movie. Let's just leave it at that. The thing I love most about this movie is that most fans agree it's in the top 2 of all-time best Star Wars movies. If they don't have it ranked number 1, it's number 2. In a world where everyone seems to disagree with as to what Star Wars is supposed to feel like and what makes a good Star Wars movie, we all come together to unanimously agree that this is one of the best. It manages to do so because the script is so well done and so well streamlined. Imagine if we didn't get introduced to Finn until 45 minutes into A Force Awakens. It would just feel jarring. But here, it somehow feels right. Especially when you see scenes like this.
Everything's under control. Situation normal.
What happened?
Had a slight weapons malfunction, but everything's perfectly all right now. We're fine. We're all fine here now. Thank you. How are you?
One of the best swerves of this movie that subverts expectations is that Leia is actually a brass, sassy girl boss. You wouldn't know it from her first scene because we're shown a dainty woman running away from an army, but once our heroes rescue her, all hell breaks loose. She's screaming and demanding in anything but a damsel in distress.
Screaming? You didn't have a plan for getting out?
He's the brains, sweetheart.
Now we have to talk about the one bad thing about this movie. You've probably noticed I've avoided talking about it this entire time, even sidestepped it when talking about Han Solo, and that's for this movie has been changed and remastered countless times. George Lucas can't keep his dirty fingers off it. When I said it was perfect that Han Solo murders a guy to escape being captured, I meant it. I was purposely removing the fact that remakes of this movie have Guido shooting first. Some of the pacing even gets fucked with by adding scenes that had originally been shot and left out. The feeling of being streamlined is gone. We have a scene of Han being talked to by a bounty hunter about how Han is a wanted man, only to retell that with new exposition and another scene from Jabba himself. Let's not even point out that this scene with Han has been redone so many times that it's lost all of its original meaning. Now, instead of Han being the cool smuggler wanted guy who shoots first, the bounty hunter yells some kind of alien profanity at Han, shoots first, Han breaks his neck, and then shoots the bounty hunter in self-defense.
Oscar.
Yes, I bet you have.
Sorry about the mess.
To make matters worse, that's how you have to watch the movie now. It's on all physical media and Disney Plus this way. They only sell it this way. They stopped making copies of the original cut, so a weaker, less badass Han Solo is what we're stuck with now. The CGI does help with the battle scene, so not all is lost. The space battle, or the Star War, if you will, is what hooked me into Star Wars. Overall, I give this movie a perfect 10 out of 10. I'm ranking the original, not the special edition. Shut up, I don't care, we're moving on. This is where the argument about the prequels not being planned out holds absolutely no weight. Anyone who complains that there wasn't a game plan for the sequel trilogy didn't pay attention to the original trilogy. Han and Leia are now in a love storyline that started completely off screen, despite all signs pointing towards Luke and Leia. We do get a quick few minutes of Luke being a pilot again, which again was the whole point of A New Hope, but that's it. It's never referenced in Star Wars ever again, aside from the fact that Luke does have an X-Wing. That's it. In this movie, we're introduced to a few new main characters, most notably Yoda. His first appearance is a clumsy, spry, energetic goblin that smarts off to Luke, but as is typical in Star Wars, your expectations are averted when you discover that Yoda is actually a wise, calm Jedi Master. It's through Yoda where the Force is actually fleshed out as a concept. In A New Hope, we're told that the Force can guide you and it can also help you choke a bitch. But in this movie, we're shown that it could do a whole lot more. Every movie introduces a new skill or two that the Force can do. In this one, little old Yoda lifts an X-Wing out of the swamp using his concentration. This is important because it's used later against Luke in a corridor fight that he rushes into without training. Don't act like this scene didn't shape your childhood, using the Force to open automatic doors at the grocery store or the gas station. Reviews for this movie weren't exactly favorable, with most complaints being that it was too dark, especially compared to the last one. In this movie, the bad guys do win. The idea this was going to be an ongoing saga was a new concept to moviegoers, so they saw this ending as a little too depressing. Luke loses his fight against Vader and is tossed away. Han is captured and turned into a coffee table, and the whole team is double-crossed by Lando. 10 out of 10, perfect movie. This movie absolutely kills me when people say that Disney sold out for the cash. I mean, if Disney is the one who sold out for the cash, what the fuck is an Ewok? Han Solo should have died in Empire Strikes Back because his character had already gone through a full story arc. I'll die on that hill. He was a loner bad guy that turned into a good guy by the love of his friends, and that's all he needed for his heroic sacrifice. In this movie, he's just a Luke without the powers. If someone has a counter argument that'll make me see Han in a different light in this movie specifically, I'm willing to hear it out. But as of right now, it seems like Harrison Ford really phoned in his performance and the writers had nothing for him. They continue the love angle with Leia, which doesn't take any bumps until Han learns that Leia loves Luke, and only because he's her brother. The whole conflict lasts about 2 lines of dialogue. Other than that, Han has literally nothing to do with this movie's plot. In this movie, he is Rose from the sequel trilogy. No real point to the plot, just kinda here for exposition's sake. Also, why are Han and Lando friends now? I get the time has passed for Lando, Luke, and Leia, and also, just for funsies, we have the Shadows of the Empire story, but we're brought in right when Han is released from Carbonite prison, and the last he knew, Lando betrayed him. Why is this storyline dropped completely? Not only is Han cool with Lando, but he begs him to take the Millennium Falcon into battle. Begs him. A lot of plot points from The Empire Strikes Back, like Boba Fett, Lando, Luke rushing in, all get dropped immediately for the Return of the Jedi. The only one that has a satisfying ending is Luke's story, because it's actually represented in the beginning of this movie that time has passed and Luke is now a full-fledged, calm Jedi. Time hasn't passed for Han, he's been in Carbonite this whole time. Anyway, there's a lot of complaints about Act 1 in Return of the Jedi, where the Scooby-Doo gang infiltrates Jabba's palace and the whole plan is very convoluted, but I don't know. I didn't mind it. I liked it as a kid and I'm willing to just enjoy it for what it is as an adult. Really, I have no complaints. Luke's arc is nearly complete as he's now a full-fledged badass just like he dreamed of being in A New Hope, with the exception of avenging his father. Lando helps rescue Han to fully close his story arc. Leia in a bikini, what else could you possibly need? Sure, Boba Fett dies like a little bitch and screams like a wuss, which is one thing I wish they would have retconned in the special edition, but they didn't for whatever reason. I plan to do a whole video on the rise, and fall again of Boba Fett, so I'm not going to dig too much into this aspect of the movie. Just know that as a kid I hated it, and as an adult I hated it, but times infinity. It all accumulates to a Star War, but interweaved with this war is a lightsaber battle. It's not as good as a New Hope battle, and the fact that we keep cutting to a lightsaber battle is a very jarring change of pace from the zoom. I don't hate this ending, but it's a far cry battle from the one that made me fall in love in A New Hope. I'm sorry, did I say it was interweaved with a lightsaber battle? I meant to say a lightsaber battle and miniature bears taking on the Empire. Yeah, these little guys are a massive threat to the bad guys in this movie. I mentioned that the lightsaber battles were jarring, but now imagine a third scenario popping up where Teddy Ruxpins are manhandling well-trained militia. The good guys win and we get our happy ending that fans were looking for in Empire Strikes Back. Honestly, this movie planted the seeds for movies like Infinity War and Endgame, where the bad guys get the upper hand in movie 1, so that the win by the good guys in movie 2 lands much harder. It helps build the anticipation. In test screenings, Lando dies, but it didn't go over very well with the audience, so they changed it. But like Han, I believe Lando should have died. His story was over. And based on all the Lando material we got post-original trilogy, I'm looking at you, Rise of Skywalker, his character would have been better off making a noble sacrifice. From a certain point of view is just the original trilogy's somehow Palpatine return. And nostalgia doesn't let most people see it that way. It was very clear these movies were written with completely different intentions in mind, and Star Wars has a long history of hand-waving away certain plot points whenever they don't want to admit they just screwed up by starting them. We're finally introduced to the Emperor in this movie. I mean, we learned about his existence in the last movie, but he was so thinned out as a character that he wasn't even played by the final actor in Empire Strikes Back. He's essentially Snoke of this trilogy. Some evil, twisted Force user who just gets joy off being evil. He has no backstory, no real motivation other than world dominance, and he's so one-noted, it's delightful. He's also killed off in the movie he's introduced in, just like Snoke. If you don't see the parallels and still think they only did Snoke dirty, I don't know what to tell you. 7 out of 10, decent movie, not a good Star Wars movie, but totally rewatchable. Star Wars is a cultural phenomenon. Even though I don't rank Return of the Jedi very high, especially considering that the first 2 movies were perfect 10 out of 10s, the entire trilogy is so good it had people hooked for decades. There's no denying the impact these movies had on all of pop culture. They played a huge part in my life, from my childhood to my writing career and even into YouTube. They were so good, in fact, that they announced a new trilogy in the 1990s being helmed once again by none other than George Lucas himself. So is it as good as the original trilogy? Spoiler alert, no. It's much, much worse. I don't want to have to watch these movies. Admittingly, being a huge Star Wars fan, I've only watched the prequels maybe a total of 4 times altogether. But ever since the sequels trilogies have been made, there's this revisionist history that everyone has always loved the prequels. And that's not even remotely true. The prequels were long considered second tier to the original trilogy, a very lackluster attempt to try and capture lightning a second time. I'd actually love nothing more than to skip these movies and go straight into the sequels, because I have a lot I have to say about those movies. But no, I promised a comprehensive look at all the Star Wars movies, so okay, here we go. My God, someone save me. Stay tuned for the next episode where I torture myself with this kind of shit.
He's jealous. He's holding me back.